this is what makes a company unique. And you need to understand that if you're trying to make a company in which like everybody fits and everybody is happy, then nobody's happy.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast. My name is Brad Hefta-Gaub, and my trusty co-host is
Scott Porad. How are you doing today, Brad?
It's all right. I'm doing great, Scott. It's good to see you. And today we have a really interesting guest, Miguel Carranza. Did I say your name correctly, Miguel?
That's perfect.
Awesome. And welcome to the podcast, Miguel. You were just telling us how you feel like there's a dearth of podcasts for CTOs. And so here you are on a podcast for CTOs, by CTOs, talking about CTO stuff. Tell us
Yeah.
about yourself. Tell us how you got here. And yeah, let's get into it.
Thank you very much for having me. This is super exciting. My name is Miguel. I'm originally from Spain, from the south of Spain. And I got my first computer when I was 8, and I guess that's when I fell in love with the world of computers. And I wanted to come to Silicon Valley because that's where all the magic happened, or that's what I thought. I mean, I'm dating myself, I guess, but that was a Pentium 1, one of the first Pentiums. It didn't even have Windows 95 back in the day. But yeah, I fell in love with that, and I kept learning as much as I could. Studied computer science at university. That is when I realized that coming to the US wasn't as simple. You needed a visa. There were like many other things, but eventually I got the opportunity to join a small startup in San Francisco, originally as an intern. And we were a mobile app that was Duolingo before Duolingo existed, kind of. It was language learning. It got a big round from Sequoia. The company started growing. I got a full-time offer at that point. But yeah, Duolingo came up and we needed to build a new product. And that's when I met my co-founder. He joined this company like 4 or 5 weeks after I did. So we had been working together for a long time before starting RevenueCat. And essentially, with this new product that we were building was another mobile app. One thing that we realized was that the one-time purchase business model wasn't going to work because we were generating very expensive content and new mini games every month. So we were like, okay, we need to do subscriptions because that's recurring revenue, SaaS. That's what's gonna solve all the problems, right?
Yeah, totally.
Back in the day, it was more difficult because you needed explicit permission from both Google and Apple. Because they wanted to take their 30% cut too, and they didn't want the app stores to look scammy. But also the APIs were not that great. Like we thought it was going to be very easy, and again, it wasn't rocket science, but it wasn't like super easy to implement. And the product ended up being pretty successful. Was app of the year in 2014. It was called Elevate. It was a brain training app, but yeah. It was scaling, we're starting to see like all the problems, all the edge cases, race conditions that the App Store had. The APIs were inconsistent, and again, when you're making $1,000, $2,000 a month, you don't see them. But when you're making millions of dollars, then you start seeing all the problems and people complaining, customer support tickets. People say like, "Hey, I paid for this. This is a scam, and it's not good." We became experts in this particular problem. It was only just the billing. It was at the same time the growth team realized like, oh, this is working. We want to see the data in real time. We want to do price experiments. We want to do paywalls experiments. We want to do targeted discounts. We want to know in real time why somebody cancels a subscription. Can we send them another offer or something like that? So we started building like all the data layer, all the pipelines and all the experimentation things on top of that, to the point in which it became the most challenging engineering problem at the company that nobody wanted to work on that. We decided, we even looked to see if somebody was doing it as a service. We realized that nobody else was doing it. We talked with a lot of app developers, and the ones who had tried, they all told us that it was a case, that it was a tricky problem, that they definitely underestimated. At that point, again, frankly, I love working with my co-founder, Jacob. We're both technical. We were both the most senior engineers at this previous company. And yeah, I wasn't thinking billion-dollar company. It was like, okay, this product needs to exist. Even if it's open source or whatever, it should be good. It's going to be a challenging project. Yeah, we started working on it. Obviously, we had a lot of experience because we had been working on this particular niche problem for like 4 or 5 years at that point. and we built the original version very quickly, and we applied to Y Combinator. I thought there was no way we could get in because it was only two guys with not a lot of revenue and stuff, but we got in first try. And then during Y Combinator is when we started realizing, okay, this actually has the potential to become a business. Nobody thought this was an actual problem. It seemed very niche, but we're actually getting customers, and we are growing both because we're getting new users, but at the same time, the users are making more money. And our mission is help developers make more money, and our business model is we take a percentage of what you make, essentially. So people get excited when they have to pay us because that means that they're making money. So yeah, it was the double way that we had to grow. Yeah, that was in 2018, summer 2018, and we've been doing this for a while. And now, yeah, team is fully remote. We are in, I think, 27 countries or something like that, 140 people. 2/3 of that is engineering, like 97, 98 people is in the engineering org. So most people report to me directly or indirectly, which is a lot. It's the biggest team that I've ever worked at for sure. And yeah, super technical team because our customers are developers. So even in the marketing team, we have developers too. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's a great story. I love the fact that, there's so many stories where an engineer that's working on some completely different problem, some completely different application, they see this pain point and then they say, oh, that's actually an interesting pain point that I bet you I'm not the only one that has that. And that sounds like the story of RevenueCat. So I love it. I love that you basically saw a pain point, saw a problem, had knowledge about it, and then came up with a working solution.
Pretty much. Now I know a lot more, but I've always wanted to try. I always love startups, so I always wanted to I should start a company at some point. But I do think now, knowing that I know, it's many stars align. It was the right co-founder, the right timing, and the right problem. I do think the fact that I feel so much connection with the problem and our users because I felt the same pain is what has made me stay that long and push through all the bad times and all of that because it's not an easy journey for sure.
No, it's definitely not. Yeah.
I think there's a really good lesson in something you said to engineers who think they might want to start their own company, which is if you're working on something that's tricky and difficult and nobody else is solving that problem, but many other companies have that problem and probably have similar teams of engineers working on it, that's a signal. It's a signal that there's an opportunity there.
Absolutely.
And the difficulty, the hardness is the signal, actually. If it was easy, people would be doing it.
Absolutely. And I remember this perfectly because when we got some press when we launched and TechCrunch had the article and stuff, and it said something, my co-founder said something along the lines that we were solving a very boring and interesting problem that developers had. My friends were like, "You're stupid. Why are you saying that? Now it's going to be very difficult to hire people and all of that." And it was partially true, but at the end of the day, there's something very powerful. It's not what makes your company unique. It's true that engineers love the nerdy stuff and the technical challenge, but at the end of the day, you don't want to be wasting time. It's the same thing with tokens now, right? Like people are saying "Oh, AI is going to be able to take away all the SaaS and stuff." And it's like, yeah, I'm sure that a lot of the ones that are just insert and update data in a database, maybe, but also do you really want to be burning most of your tokens in some things that are not unique to your product? Maybe eventually when the costs don't make any sense, but at the beginning you should just build your own product, right?
All right. So how long did it take, Scott?
Yeah, Miguel, we both looked up at the clock. I think it took about 7 minutes to get to
Oh,
AI.
Jesus.
7 minutes.
Okay.
So I don't want to go down AI for a second. I want to go down a different path if we could. You mentioned, I think you said you had we said 2/3 of 140 people. So my rough math is you got about 90 engineers on your team?
Yes, but not necessarily. I would say that's engineering product. That's engineering and product because also support team. Our support team is very technical and they report into engineering. They didn't used to originally, but I ended up getting and they. Obviously they help with integrations, debugging, helping with enterprise support tickets, all of that. I think. I don't know exact numbers, but I would say probably 60 to 70 are on product and infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. That wasn't my core questions. Could be so what are the big challenges your team is facing? What is a team that size? there's something every day not going right, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's fires every day. I think. Okay. I mean, I try to think about it historically how I have been thinking about this on a day to day. I mean, originally for me, the biggest concern was like, do we have product market fit? Are we building something people want? Luckily, for both, I mean, we found it very quickly because we knew that the problem, and it turns out that people wanted to pay for this, so that was great. Then the second challenge, which I think we're always gonna have, is how the hell do we scale this? Like we are growing really fast. We're critical infrastructure. Like we're doing right now. I don't know how many. I think four. I stopped counting at some point when it wasn't my direct responsibility, but 4 to 5 billion API requests a day, which means that if 1 minute, if we have an outage for 1 minute, it means that, I mean, it's obvious in Twitter, everybody complains, we get support tickets because that means that somebody's trying to purchase something and it didn't go, and they got charged, but they didn't get what they paid for, which is the worst outcome. So yes, scaling reliability has always been and always be, obviously we've learned a lot. We hire really great people, but it's reliability and security are always going to be something that is top of mind for a product like ours. But then, frankly, after that, and I think when we got to like 20, 30 employees, my biggest concern has been culture, right? As a founder, too. It's like making sure how do we build a very solid culture that gets even better, but we don't lose like to me, the test is like we have really good retention with the first employees. We have people that joined in 2018 and they're still with us, like the first 4 or 5 employees, they're all with us. And to me, I want like if they come to me and say like, oh, the company is not what it used to be, or it's a lot more different, or like, of course it has changed, but they need to be able to grow with the company. But if they feel like the essence is lost, then I feel a little bit worried. I mean, sometimes you can never build a company that makes everybody happy, but I think especially for the early ones that help shaping the culture and where we are today, I think it's a very good indicative. But yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the way I have approached building the company and the team has been to try to hire better people than me in every area. I think I did pretty well on the technical side of things because I never wanted to be a manager and I never liked people. I'm a computer person, so I knew how to detect good engineers. So I hired really good engineers. I think I made more mistakes on the management side of things. But we have a pretty solid structure now. But again, I think that's always going to be an ongoing issue, right? Is making sure that we keep building a great team, keep hiring the best people that we can, doing performance management when we have to, or even firing people when we have to, right? But like making sure that the team is a great team is what is going to make the company essentially.
I think it's interesting, Miguel, like this is a worthwhile moment to pause for prospective CTOs or CTO or people that are like strong technical leaders that have a vision. I think it's so profound that you right out of the gate covered your first concern was a business problem, not a technical problem. Do we have product market fit? Your second concern was a very clearly technical problem. How do we scale to 4 billion transactions a day and provide high quality technical results? And then your third problem, which I think is the area that so few early engineering leaders focus on, is how do we build and maintain a culture? And I think it's so, honestly, Miguel, I think that's super compelling. I could see Scott smiling as you were answering this question, and I was smiling too, because I think that that's like the meat of a big thing about what we try to talk about here as CTOs. Like you can't ignore culture.
Yeah.
It's so important.
So can I riff on that, Brad? Which is,
Yeah,
I'd
please.
be curious to know, Miguel, what was the culture that you had or that you were trying to create? What were the attributes of the culture that you wanted? And then were there any, I don't know, practices or anything that others could copy from you sort of to keep those things in place?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question because I didn't know. Also because I had been working with my co-founder Jacob for a very long time. So this is when we started. This is how we were used to working, and we have very similar values and way of. I mean, we disagree on many things, obviously, but at the end of the day, we have very similar values in how software should be written, or how building a team, or even personal relationship with everybody else. And I didn't used to believe in this at the beginning. We were starting the company, and I remember our third engineer, I think it was, he asked us directly, and it was somebody that we knew, that we had worked in the past with, both of us, and he asked me, "Hey, how does the culture look like?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like, you tell us. It's you work with me, you work with Jacob, but it's essentially that, and whatever you bring to the table. That's what the culture is gonna be." But one thing that we did very early on, which my co-founder Jacob, before the first person joined, was like, "Oh, we should write down our values or the company values or how we should operate." And I thought that was bullshit, honestly, because it was like, no, everybody wants great employees. Everybody wants great people, great engineers. But then you start realizing like, okay, well, there's some unique things about how we work and how we make certain decisions that might not be obvious for certain people. And in fact, we've seen it, like there's even very great engineers that might come from another environment in which maybe they're not critical infrastructure. Maybe they don't care that much about testing, or they don't care about something else that turns out is important for us. So yeah, we ended up writing our 4 values, which I kind of extended a little bit more for engineering. But for us, it's always be shipping. Like, shipping is the most important thing. And so that means that you need to be very pragmatic. Then customer obsession, which is like, at the end of the day, as you mentioned before, software is cool, but if people don't use it, or if it doesn't solve a real problem, then it's useless, really. And nowadays it's even worse because code is disposable pretty much. And then own it, which is ownership, right? Like making sure yeah, we're gonna be shipping, maybe we're gonna be shipping on Fridays. Yeah, it's good that we ship on Friday, but make sure that you don't just ship something and go away for a vacation or for the holidays or the weekend, and you leave it broken for the next people to take care of it, right? So yeah, these are kind of the things. I think for me, 2 things that I try to be very pragmatic, right? Like in the software industry, and I mean, I have been in long enough in Silicon Valley to see how all the hype cycles and the trendy technologies. And when I moved to San Francisco, the most important thing, or the thing that was trendy, was MongoDB and non-relational databases, right? And at that point, everybody was like, okay, everything is Mongo, everything needs to be non-relational and blah blah. And it's like, yeah, this is cool, but there's no silver bullets, right? This solves a very particular problem really well, but maybe for other things, you can also trust relational databases, or maybe you can have a combination of both systems, right? Like, you need to be very pragmatic about it, and I think that's something that has work out really well at this company, even with the adoption of AI, right? Like, people were skeptical at first, but they were very curious, and then we've been able to adopt it in a way that made sense for everybody. And yeah, I would say that. And the other one is like making sure that, like, being extremely paranoid. I think when you're joining a startup, you need to be very optimistic, because I mean, chances are that you're gonna fail, but you need to be optimistic and believe that you're gonna achieve something. But at the same time, if you're building critical infrastructure, there's value in being extremely pessimistic or paranoid that even the smallest change can bring down the whole system, right? And that's what I try to tell all the engineers. Is like, hey, actually, the smallest pull requests are the most dangerous ones, because they just like, oh, can I get a quick review and we'll ship it, and this is a more thing. Those are the ones that bring the servers down. So
100%.
no change is innocuous. Like, make sure that you are extremely paranoid, and yes, keep shipping, but just think about what's the worst case scenario. What can go wrong when I deploy, or when I launch, when I ship this change. I don't know. Those are part of the culture, I guess.
Let me recap that for a second. Let's see if I have
Yeah.
I think I missed the first one. I mean, I heard it, but I don't remember it in my head. And then it was what was the first thing you said? Something.
Always be shipping.
Always be shipping. Be pragmatic. Own it, and be extremely paranoid.
Yeah.
And he also said customers
Customer
first,
obsession.
so like
Yes.
Oh
customer
yeah, of
obsession.
course.
Yeah.
That's right.
I just want to reflect a little bit on this. I think that you started to tell the story of like values, where your co-founder said, "Hey, let's have some values," and your immediate reaction was kind of like, "That seems like bullshit." And I mean, like, I can't count the number of companies that I've interacted with where it's like these value statements they just feel like platitudes, right?
Excellence.
Excellence, yeah,
Yeah.
Integrity.
integrity, right?
Yeah.
And but what's interesting to me, Miguel, is the fact that it was this third employee who already worked with your co-founder, and you sort of felt like your answer would have been, look, you know us, you know what you know, you've worked with us, you know our perspective on this. And the idea that, like, to me, I think the way to get out of platitudes and into like actually meaningful values is, can you capture the authentic perspective of the founders and what they want the companies to be, what they want that culture to be. And it's less important like what those values are, maybe,
Correct.
and it's more important that whatever you say your values are,
You're consistent
that
and it's obvious.
you're consistent and you're obvious. Like it really is. Like I can tell, like the energy that you give off is like, yeah, of course we ship on Friday. If we've got an important customer that has a
Right.
meaningful thing that's going to make a difference for them, then of course we're shipping it on Friday. And we take ownership of that. We do, we are ruthlessly thinking about practicality and uptime and scale and so those are our values, and you can see it on your face that that's what you care about as a CTO. Like if you had said instead, like, enjoy family time,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you somehow had been convinced that, that that's what you needed to add to your values, people would be like, that's not Miguel. That guy's up at 3 a.m. on Friday fixing some customer bug.
Well, there's a couple of things to add there. I mean, I think, well, there's another fourth value that I didn't add, which was the most controversial one because people didn't get it, which is balance, which is, and I still believe it in any way, like even when making technical decisions and analyzing trade-offs and stuff. But the reason was because when we started the company, both my co-founder and I were working like every Saturday or Sunday even, and we were like, okay, this is going to be a very long journey. Let's make sure that we don't burn out. And but again, this is one of those things that people can misinterpret and think like, oh, balance means that I don't need to work. And it's like, no, it means that if there's an incident or an outage or something and you stay up late, then maybe you don't need to come to work next day or can come later and you are an adult and you need to do it. But again, it needs to be, people really need to understand what it means. But another example is like we are very transparent, right? My co-founder and I don't know how to lie, and we send even things like, I don't know, the investor updates, they are shared with everybody else. The cap table, everybody knows the cap table, how much money is in the bank, all those things. I send an update every Friday to the whole company about what I'm excited about and what I'm scared about and the good and the bad. But we don't say transparency is a value, right? Because it's one of those things that it would feel dishonest. It's something that people need to figure out if we are, because there's different level of transparency too, right? But yeah, I mean, another exercise that we do, we have a channel in which we highlight when people do, and I particularly like doing it for people outside of engineering, when somebody does something that is probably not expected from them or something that is very customer obsessed or ships something that people were not expecting. I always try to shout them out so that the rest of the company see like, okay, this is the type of activities that actually embody our values, and you see them every week, right? And they're good examples for people to find the motivation to be like, okay, these are the things that are rewarded. And then it's another thing that you need to take into account too, like it's part of performance too. When you're doing performance management, the cultural aspect plays a big role in the, like you can be the best engineer in the world, but if you're not going in the same direction as the company or doing the right things, then you might perform less than somebody that is probably not as smart or as experienced as you, but is like solving a real customer issue and shipping every day, right?
Yeah, totally.
So I wonder if you could tell us about a time where you and your co-founder, could have been someone else in your company, I suppose, made a decision that was difficult in order to stay aligned with your values, right? I'm not thinking of an example to give to spark it, but I know that I've been in a place where there have been I've experienced my career times where somebody has said, let's do this, and as a leader we've had to come back and say no, like that's not aligned with our values, and our values is this other thing, and as a result we're having to choose a harder path, a harder solution. Sometimes and that can range from saying no to a certain type of customer that doesn't meet the standards, or no to how something gets built, or I don't know what. Have you had experiences like that where you've had to make difficult choices, or a difficult choice?
I mean, it's difficult to come up with a concrete example because I feel like we have decisions like that every day, pretty much. And that's
Mhm.
the beauty of having these things encoded in people's DNAs or like written down, because people have a framework to make this type of decisions, and some of them don't even escalate to us. Right? I mean, even today, we had a scenario, and it's a little thing, right? But even somebody that is 2 levels below me knew what the right answer was. Most of our customers are self-serve. We have a sales motion, but it's not obviously we have enterprise and bigger customers like OpenAI. Obviously, they don't just go and click and put their credit card, right? It's a longer selling process. We have a technical account manager and a customer success manager for the biggest enterprise accounts. And there was one account that, for whatever reason, ended up, I don't know why it happened, but ended up having a Slack channel with us. And they didn't have a technical account manager assigned. Some of them asked me like, hey, like, should we really do this? Because technically they're not an enterprise customer and they don't have the right to have this. And they're asking a lot of questions. Should we send them to the standard Zendesk support system and not get the priority? And it's like, well, and they knew the answer was like, yeah, it sucks. And it's probably not super fair to other customers. But for whatever reason, they ended up having a Slack channel. We need to treat them as if they were like, what the customer obsession is like, they have a problem right now. Let's solve the problem right now. And then we'll figure it out, how it affects us in terms of contract value or whatever. But right now we need to make sure that they are served. So yeah, things like that happen pretty much every day. And then, I mean, I don't know, like there's has been situations too in which customers needed something right away for whatever reason, or maybe it wasn't even our fault, right? Most of the time it's like bad configuration, or they had an outage and they're missing data and whatever, and they wanted us to do something for them. We try to jam. It's part of always be shipping and customer obsession. It's like, okay, well, they didn't pay for this, but if we can make their life easier, let's go. And I think it's also part of like understanding that sometimes for this type of thing, especially for the one-off things, first of all, it creates a great customer experience. People are gonna remember this forever when you make them a favor when they had a big trouble. But also maybe they don't need like, oh, we need a perfect ETL system. No, they just probably need a CSV with the data that they were missing, and we just like dump it and send it to them in a S3 bucket or whatever, right? So yeah, it's making sure that people understand that it's not always what is the most elegant, better technical solution for a problem, but what is the fastest path for solving a customer problem that then we can iterate and make perfect. But like, again, the biggest mistake here is always, which is very common in engineering, which is like, oh, let's build the most over-engineered perfect system that is scalable. And then it turns out that it doesn't solve any problem and people don't use it.
Yeah, that's where when you're be pragmatic and always be shipping. And I could totally picture it. Like, as soon as you were kind of walking through your values and you kind of told the story of like, hey, you might be like the world's greatest engineer, but if you don't demonstrate these values, then you're not going to be a fit here. The thing that comes to my mind is the person that's like overly focused on the perfect implementation or the more elaborate implementation, or the like, oh look, this is the right way to do it. And if that right way to do it isn't achieving the goals of being pragmatic or being really focused on actual customer needs, then it's like, yeah, look, you're not going to be a good fit here, right? You're going to constantly just be butting heads where we're going to be like, no, like.
And that's another learning that I had too, is that you want your culture to be as welcoming as possible, for sure. But at the end of the day, like, this is what makes a company unique, and you need to understand that if you're trying to make a company in which like everybody fits and everybody is happy, then nobody's happy, really. And there's things that are not negotiable, and other things that how we work and why certain people love working here and other people don't, and it's fine. Like, you cannot feel terrible about that.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, there's something you said a few minutes ago that I really loved, which is you said, I asked for an example, and you said, well, it's just a lot of small decisions. And you talked about how it's, not just you, but other people on the team making these decisions. And I love how those values, they serve as guidance. They serve as almost like a guidance of last resort, right?
Yes.
When you're doing something and you don't know what to do, see if these help guide you in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really great.
That's one of the people, again, I mean, I guess I see it more clearly after many years, but that's when people tell you, no, culture is what people do when the founders are not looking or whatever. And it kind of
Yeah,
is, right? Like if you have those guidelines written down and it looks like, okay, well, I follow this algorithm or whatever, and it kind of came up with a similar conclusion, I guess then you can define this as culture probably.
yeah.
It's terrific.
I was gonna maybe pivot a little bit, and I kind of want to pivot to your first key concern of product market fit, and then we can rewind the tape about 20 minutes to you first uttering into the presence the token genie, the AI genie.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, as I think about RevenueCat, I think that it's possible, this is my naive perspective, that
Mhm.
you might be seeing sort of like the AI, vibe coding boom as both a incredible opportunity for RevenueCat as well as a potential risk for RevenueCat. And I'm just kind of curious, if you think about product market fit and the dawning of like everybody thinks they're a programmer. What's your forecast? What are you thinking about the vision of RevenueCat in the new age?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, anything that I say today probably is going to be outdated next week. This is the right. Like again,
That's what's fun about this game.
yeah,
It'll
yeah,
be
totally.
outdated before the podcast comes out.
I think, and again, well, I can talk about my views on the AI and how it has evolved and everything. But I mean, it's frankly, it's been great. Like the tailwinds that we've been having are crazy for multiple reasons. One is that most of the biggest models use us, so their growth has been insane. So therefore, we grow automatically. The second one is that there's a lot of old niches and old apps that didn't have any AI, and now there's new players that are integrating AI into these apps, and they're building new apps that are making a lot of money and they're better. But also, it's way easier to build apps. That's the biggest change, right? For us, was help developers make more money. And before, developers were, we could even expand it and be like, okay, developer is anybody that is working in a developer in an app, or like even if they're a growth person or whatever. Now, developer is anybody that can prompt pretty much. So that's been pretty great. The biggest concern always is like, will you be able to tell the next model if like build a RevenueCat version for me? And I do think that there's still some defensibility. I mean, maybe for the small person, no. I think for the bigger one, there's still like all the infrastructure and the critical, like the reliability part of it, the security too. But also, we're not only doing that. That was like the main goal, but everything else, all the other growth tools that we're adding. And like right now, we're really focused on also using AI internally as part of the product and having agents that can actually help your app make more money and be able to automatically, like the vision is that automatically it knows, okay, your app has a weekly subscription or like a monthly subscription with a 1 week trial, but the pricing is not good for this country. And let's run an experiment automatically for this particular country, or only for Android or only iOS. And then I'll analyze it. And if it's good, I'll auto promote it and change the prices dynamically, things like that, which we believe it will pay, the software will pay for itself. But yeah, I mean, definitely super interesting times right now. I mean, the nice thing too is like right now, if you're building an app and you ask pretty much any LLM and you ask it, okay, I want to monetize my app, they all tell you use RevenueCat. That's the way to go. So we were kind of lucky in that sense. I mean, it depends on who you ask. Might have been lucky, might have been all the effort that we put building the brand all these years and all of that. But
Was
yeah.
Sam in charge of your YC class? And did you basically get in good with Sam, and therefore he's
Actually, he was there, but I think it was the last batch, and I don't think we ever interacted with him. I think he came to one of the dinners and gave a talk, but I think it was Michael Seibel. He was still there. Garritan wasn't there yet. But yeah, no, that was honestly like the OpenAI thing is an interesting one, because this is how we actually got in a bunch of customers. It's like we're essentially free for the indie developer until you're making 2,500. So what ends up happening is there's a lot of developers that work in the industry and work at bigger companies that have side projects and they use us. And
Mhm.
then when it's time to implement in-app subscriptions in their companies, they're like, "Oh, RevenueCat gave me a
Yeah.
pretty good service, and I don't pay them anything. Maybe the enterprise product works well,
Yeah.
and it's a very good, like when you have the engineering team as a champion is a really great way to enter a company.
Yeah, love it.
So can we talk about AI within your organization, Miguel?
Yeah.
What's that like? What do we? I mean, we've talked to everybody about this. We talk about it ad nauseum, literally the definition of ad nauseum till we're sick of it. I'm just curious. What are you seeing? Is your team using a lot of?
Yeah.
How's your team using it? What's your guys' story?
One thing that I'm quite happy about it, even though it's weird. I mean, I would have loved, on one hand, I would have loved to be like, oh, I'm the one that push people on using AI and using all these tools and stuff. No, the reality is like, honestly, nowadays I see myself more of a founder than actually the role of CTO, because I do think that we have really solid managers and really solid directors and ICs. And I'm just trying to work on what the biggest fire is. It might be engineering, it might be even cross collaboration with product or sales or whatever, right? So the funny thing is when all the, I mean, obviously I tried DALI and the initial version of ChatGPT and all of that, and I was like, oh, this is cool, this is kind of impressive, but it's a toy, right? And I'm sure there's gonna be, like, again, I know that there's no silver bullets. I have been here long enough. I didn't expect it to be a revolution, right? So I was like, okay, this is a cool thing, but there's going to be a limit for sure. Like we'll soon hit a limit in like 3-4 months, and it's not going to advance that fast. But the nice thing though is that, as I said, we have a very pragmatic team, and they organically started trying things. I was very open about like, hey, you can try whatever you want, but as long as you share the results, yeah, you have. I mean, not a limited budget, but pretty much. So people started playing with Copilot, Cursor, with all the tools, and it was very organic. That's the reality. It's like people were feeling like, oh, okay, we tried this and it worked really well, or we tried this and it works really great for our SDKs, but it doesn't work that well for our backend, or they saw it. Okay, this person is a lot more productive. Why is this person? They were curious. Why is this person a lot more productive? What's their workflow? Let's share that information. So yeah, we were very early on, and we saw the results in terms of productivity very fast. It's also true because our team is, since we are remote, we don't have that many junior people, because that's a risk to it, especially at the beginning, because the code that was auto-generated looked really good. But at the beginning, it didn't solve the thing that it was supposed to solve. So
Yeah.
it still required. It was really good for like boilerplate or auto-completing code, but not really designing stuff. Obviously, it has improved a lot nowadays. And yeah, I guess we're at a point right now in which, like, obviously everybody's super productive. We have even people that are not engineers, people from product or design, even opening pull requests. I think, well, the two challenges that we have right now, one is making sure that now we should try to standardize it as much as possible, because I don't think it's cool that people experiment, but there's diminishing returns. I think there's a few people that should be experimenting or that are very passionate about it, but we should at least have a framework of like, oh, this is how we do most of the things. And if you want to have an agent that is working while you're sleeping, this is the way to do it, and don't reinvent the wheel. But also for the code we generate, we set up a rule which is essentially anybody can open any pull request, but you don't need to be able to write, like maybe you were not able to write that code by yourself, but you need to be able to fully understand it, which means that if you want to change a button and then the results, the cloud code or whatever, or codex gave you a 4,000 lines pull request, unless you are very confident that you can explain every single line, then you're not allowed to open that one, right? And that means that you need to keep fighting with the AI until it's very clear or you understand everything, because the problem is that then it's a bottleneck on the reviewers, right? Like if you end up trying to come up with a very simple change and then it turns out that there was a much easier or faster way to do it, and that has definitely brought down the number of bad pull requests coming up.
I think it's so interesting, Miguel. This is obviously something that I've been advocating for a really long time, that if the reason that I think, I mean, you sort of said this earlier, like the code early on, the code was written, but it wouldn't necessarily be solving the problem, right? And this idea that as a senior engineer, you can read the code and you know whether it's solving the problem. Like you can interrogate, like you like your rule of, hey, don't open a pull request unless you really can argue that that's the right way to implement the thing that the pull request is doing, right?
Yeah.
And what I feel like I see is the teams that are really accelerating with AI are the ones where everyone on the team can meet your pretty clear standard, right? They could have written the code themselves, but they had the agent do the
Right.
work, and they have no problem signing their name to that
Exactly.
because they understood it.
And they do it faster and can do more things in parallel. But however, there's another interesting phenomenon that I've been seeing, which is that, I mean, it's the AI psychosis, right? Like the AI always tells you like, oh, you're doing great, this is amazing, let's make it better, right? And
Right.
it gives you this dopamine hit. It's like, oh my god, I built so much. Like in the past, this would have taken me a month, and I would have needed 3 more engineers, and now I'm able to do it in an afternoon, and I'm going so fast. This is great, and that is problematic too, because most of the times the AI is gonna tell you, it's gonna tell you yes to everything. So sometimes you're like, okay, and how do I make it scale 10 orders of magnitude more, and then it will like, okay, and let's add Redis, and let's add that other thing. And then I've seen it, like people have ended up with big projects that could have been a Python script, right? And it's like, okay, well,
Right.
this is really, really, really over engineered, and I get it, it's cool, and the AI did it for you, but at the end of the day, you need to be guiding it, right? You cannot fully be trusting it,
Yeah.
because it might come up with an architecture that doesn't make sense for the needs that we have.
Yeah.
So here's something that I think, Miguel, you might be allergic to. I was just talking to someone on our team today who is not an engineer. He's one of our TPMs.
Okay.
Actually, I think he worked earlier in his career as a software engineer and an engineering manager, but at this company, I've only ever worked with him as a TPM. And we have a bug reporting pipeline. Basically, someone can go into Slack. I think it's called a Slack workflow. You basically get a form to fill out, and it posts a
Yep.
bug and it pushes it into Jira. And he said, I'm going to go see if I can connect into this thing and actually have it go straight from someone reporting a bug to creating a pull request. Let's just, and he's like, as opposed to having this be a bug reporting tool, let's have this be a bug solving tool. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Let's try it out, see how that works. Now, here we have a case where there's no engineer in the middle, right? It's just someone went into Slack and said, this is a problem I found. And then a pull request gets made. And then we're going to have this big bottleneck of people having to review.
Yeah.
Would you do that?
I mean, we're experimenting with a lot of these things, but it's I still think that we're still not there yet, because at the end of the day, there's something missing, which is, I mean, the context is what is missing, right? Like if they had perfect context about all your customers, your historical problems, the code base and everything, yeah, I would trust it. But the reality is that that's not how it is right now. And I've seen it multiple times, right?
Yeah, like just like that's my reaction is forget AI forget AI for a second, okay? Let's
Yeah.
say there's no such thing as AI coding. Would you want a direct from a customer directly to an engineer to solve that one thing? Like you still have to adjudicate the bug. Like that's what bug triage is for. Somebody needs to say like, is that even a bug? I can't count the number of times that I've seen a bug
Right.
report. I've seen bug reports filed by product managers that are complaining about a bug in the thing that they described, where literally you could pull a product spec up from 2 months earlier, where the thing that they're now describing as a bug was explicitly stated in the product requirements.
Yeah, and again, maybe it's not a bug. Maybe the software is working as intended, or maybe it was wrong requirement, right? And you need to adapt the requirement.
Well, so I think there's some interesting questions. One is you could still do triage, but then how is it solved? Also, you're basically getting a package now. You're getting a problem and a solution to prioritize and validate, not just a problem. I don't know. Who knows if we're going to put it in production? But he said I wanted to try, and I was like, sure, go for it. See if you can make it work.
Well, there's another company out there that did something similar. Like it's a AI assisted like telemetry package, that analyzes your telemetry and then actually creates pull requests to fix whatever the telemetry was saying was wrong. So like you had a spiking 500s on some microservice or something like that, and it goes and tries to create a pull request to fix the problem. So I mean, your TPM's not the only person that's out there saying, "Hey, is this a way we could use AI to speed up our lives?" And I think it's a cool idea. I just think that like to make to Miguel's point, like you have to have the context about what the actual problem is and what the solution is. And that context is not just about the code. Like clearly we need to have the agent needs access to the code to have great context text. But like, I just think that you have to have so much, like, that's the part where I'm like convinced that like engineers, we're going to see radical shakeup in how software engineering works with
Yeah.
AI. But the most important thing that a quality senior engineer is bringing to the table is the judgment of mapping the business problem to the technology in a pragmatic, ownership, customer obsessed, balanced way.
I think that's one of the biggest problems that is like frustrating a lot of people, because there's in this industry there were people that were like overly focused on like the being an expert in one particular language, on this that like they enjoyed the craft of writing code, and that's changing, right? And I do think that it's very interesting for the people that obviously for those people it's not good times at all, because they face their own careers or identity in that particular part of the software development process. But I think to me, like, the actual typing the code is not necessarily the most important part of the software engineering side of things. We're gonna be able to do it much faster, but you still need to be able to debug, understand. And of course, you're gonna have more. You're gonna be able to do this faster, and every engineer is gonna be able to act as a little tech lead or engineering manager with a bunch of more junior or middle engineers at their disposal, for sure. But that doesn't fully remove all the other tasks that a real software engineer is supposed to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. This is a really compelling conversation, Miguel. I think you've really hit that like I don't think there's anything else we can say. Like we basically landed on, if your identity was all about the craft of writing a specific language, then you're going to have some hard times. But there's so much more to the job of software engineering. And the story that you told of RevenueCat is a great example of, like, as an engineer, you discovered a very compelling problem, a business problem. You put on your business mindset. You had great, essentially founder market fit because you knew the problem, and you've created not just a technology, but a technology, a business solution, a culture that is obsessed with really providing value. And if every one of your engineers can be like that, then it's like anything you want to solve, you're going to solve it.
That's what we try. I mean, I think so. I think at this point it's most likely that the way we die is by suicide than anything else. So hopefully if we keep hiring the right people and building the right things for the customers. That's the other nice thing about serving developers, is that it's a very interesting user base, because they have strong opinions, and
No, they don't.
no, but it's super useful. It's super useful because obviously when you do something that they don't like, they're gonna tell you, and it's gonna be very painful. But at the same time, it helps you improve the product. But if they really love what you're doing, they're also gonna tell other people, and they're gonna be your biggest fans. So it's been great serving developers, for sure.
Well, Miguel, thank you for coming and joining us.
No,
today.
thanks for having me.
We really appreciate it. This has been delightful.
It's been really fun.
Yeah, super interesting conversation. Awesome. So RevenueCat sounds like it's an amazing service for anybody that is building subscription-based models in their applications, and we'll make sure to link RevenueCat in the show notes, obviously. And thanks again, Miguel. It was awesome talking to you. Thanks for coming on the pod. This was a great conversation.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
All right, everybody. That's an episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast. And what do we say, Scott? Remember to
smash that subscribe button,
rate and review. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
This episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was edited by Saffron Hefta-Gaub. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at HowManyCTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at HowManyCTOspod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.